why I make it a webinar is so that we can welcome everyone from around the world. We have people joining this free gift to you as part of Conscious Calendars to just share knowledge, but most importantly, grounding. There's a reason I'm speaking a little slower. It can be kind of an exciting time. And so I have a lot of information to share with you, but we're going to do practices together too. I really want this to be a very rich time together. So whether you are in the shadow of this next total solar eclipse, or you are somewhere else in the world, eclipses are a window of time that we can actually deepen our spiritual practices. And I'll be talking a little more about that. We have people joining from Kenya, from Mongolia, from Norway, local here. I'm in Seattle, Washington. We've got Toronto, Canada, all up and down the West Coast, and Virginia. So we've got a lot of people. Oh, and Ontario and Denmark and Portugal. Yay. I will be there this month in just a couple of weeks. So I'll make note of that, Maria, and let you know where I'm going to be. I have some other friends in Portugal at the same time. So uh, as part of us gathering, we are literally a world community right now, and we're all here to support each other. So even though we can't see each other, we can feel each other's presence. That's why I love to turn the chat on so that if something comes up, we can encourage each other and recognize. And it's important before and after eclipses, I think, to have a sense of connection. Because I'm sure you have noticed everywhere from Forbes was making clickbait articles about this total solar eclipse 6 and 9 months ago. Excuse me. I did all of my practices this morning. And oh, on Ontario. I'm not supposed to say Ontario. Someone just said. All right, I will review that after. So, uh, part of what the eclipses do is they are a window in time where, if it's a lunar eclipse, it will always occur on a full moon. And full moons with lunar eclipses mean that the Earth is going between the sun and the moon. And so the moon goes all kind of orange and dark colored. And the most eclipses you can have in any given year are six. I think one year we had seven, about 6 or 7 years ago. And then there is solar eclipses. And solar eclipses can only occur on new moons. And new moons are when, again, the Earth, moon, and sun line up, but this time the moon goes between the Earth and the sun, and just the dynamics of the orbit and everything else that 2 times a year, the moon will be in such a position that it blots out part or all of the sun. So astronomically, it's an interesting event for those who are studying the sun. But from a spiritual standpoint, in Vedic astrology, it is said to be a time of not creating, because the sun is literally the source of our life on this planet. We're in this beautiful, unique location. And then the moon actually shines that solar light onto the earth at night, giving all the plants and herbs their healing vitality. So, in this beautiful balance, 2 times a year, 6 months apart, we just get eclipses. It's as simple as that. Now, when there is a total solar eclipse, it means that the moon's in such a position it's going to blot all of the sun out. And when it blots all of the sun out, it will shadow at 100% totality someplace on the planet. And that will move every 6 months. So the shadowing will land somewhere different. Now, I'm starting with some of these concepts, but I'm going to show you some slides. I'm going to walk you through some teachings. And as part of this gathering, what happens is the energy as soon as eclipse season begins, usually 2 weeks before the first eclipse, and all the way through 2 weeks after the last eclipse. So for this year in 2024, in spring, the eclipse season began March 9th or 13th is when we really started to feel it. And we had almost a non-starter of a lunar eclipse because you really couldn't even see it. So it didn't have as strong an effect on March 24th. And then 2 weeks later, on Monday, April 8th, 2024, that is where we will have a total solar eclipse shadowing uh, uh, an area going all the way from Mexico through, and I believe from you, if this square were, say, Mexico's down here, United States, Canada, Alaska, the eclipse will be traveling from Mexico all the way through San Antonio, Dallas, Cleveland, all the way up to Montreal. And the area of 100% totality, it will be felt a little stronger. What does felt stronger mean? It simply means that people might be a little more excited. There might be more frenzy. There might be more distractions. So even if you're in Kenya, even if you're in Norway, you might have felt some of this excitement, right? But the people who are in the path of totality, literally, people are flocking to Austin. People are flocking to Dallas. People are flocking to Cleveland in order to see this event. Now, the next total solar eclipse will be in 20 years. And that's kind of, uh, good news because eclipses bring up very often drama and desire. And have you been noticing that maybe your ability to say no to something is a little weaker around this time? I personally have noticed it. Usually I can just say, no, I'm not going to do that. I make a commitment and it's easier. And then I just sort of watch myself, do that one thing. Um, so feel free to comment. I don't know. Have you guys felt this excitement? I mean, between the clickbait and people saying, oh my gosh, this eclipse. And I didn't want to really concern or scare people at all. I simply wanted to say Vedic astrology has a very different point of view and says, maybe don't view that eclipse because it's an opportunity to actually go deeper into your spiritual path. Because the sun is what gives us life, and the moon will be blocking life force. So on a solar eclipse and a total solar eclipse, the life force is literally blocked for seconds or minutes. And that's why and that is why um, it's not considered good to be in because we're human beings. We're meant to be flourishing and growing and living on the planet. And so in the moments of blotting out of the sun, the life force, it's a time to act in resonance. Well, the resonant acts are simply to maybe draw down the shades, go inside, be quiet, meditate. I'm going to give you a bunch of different practices that you can choose one of, right? See what you're drawn to. I'm only going to be mentioning a number of different things so that you can see what works for you, what feels right for you, because we have so many different people here. Yeah. And so we can say that the people in the 100% path of totality will be feeling the frenzy a little more. They got people coming to their town. There's all this excitement about. There's sort of this frenzy and this anxiety, right? And so I want to actually start together before I even go into more information. Let's ground together. And one of the best ways to ground, and I actually have a slide on this, but one of the best ways to ground is actually to check in with your pelvis because the first chakra, Muladhara, is Mula, it's the root. It is our roots. Literally, if we are this flourishing tree, if we are a flourishing plant, the roots that go down from our first chakra. And I want you to really, what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of tilting my pelvis front and back. So it's sort of like doing cat-cow while sitting. And so right now, because this is partly why I do a webinar, so you can kind of be moving and doing whatever you want, sometimes rotating in a circle or arching your back and then tilting forward, Another thing to activate down there is to do Kegels. Some people know how to do them well. Another way is to literally just clench, just like tighten those beautiful buns that you have. Just tighten. And that just activates down below. Another thing, maybe you do this for the next 3 or 4 days, is in the morning, stretch the backs of your legs and activating the lower body. So just doing some, just standing on 2 legs and just doing some squats, just 3 to 5 squats will activate the thighs. It activates the lower body. But as you maybe do cat cow while we're talking, or you rock back and forth from left to right or forward to back, you'll notice that you have roots, and those roots can reach down into the earth. And the image I love to bring up is, when have you ever watched a nature show where they do a close up on roots? And a root may look like this large white, it almost looks fluffy. But when they zero in on it, you can actually see that there's a root and then there's all of these rootlets going out, right? It's fluffy. It's kind of like my hair when it's frizzy. It's fluffy. Roots are fluffy. And so if you actually imagine and close your eyes right now, you can either keep rocking or just uh, wiggle your toes, maybe feel the bottoms of your feet. If you're sitting cross-legged, uh, rock and activate your sits bones. And now imagine that you have roots going into the ground and they're reaching, and those roots can suck up nutrients because the first chakra is actually about safety. It's about saying, I am here, I can be nourished. Just like with a baby, right? Just like with a baby, we a baby isn't meant to do anything. It's meant to just be there and be taken care of. So your first chakra actually represents that baby inside of you, or it often represents the from being in utero all the way through the first year of life. So just like that metaphor in life, the big, heavy, plump baby that's fed and cared for and picked up and held. Your first chakra is this place to help you feel held and grounded. And so with all of this perhaps excitement, movement, curiosity happening, I think it might be really nice to just ground each day and do something to help you relax and feel the lower part of your body and activate the calm. Yeah? How does that feel to everybody? You feel a little different, right? There's always a little excitement when you come to a class. And so I really wanted to start with that as a bigger metaphor because the eclipse seasons, that month long, it's really 2 months, right? From March 13th through April 23rd of 2024 is this eclipse season. And during that month, you might notice, because Mercury will be retrograde too, yeah, people are feeling that difference, that um, there is often a time of instability. That's kind of the rule of law that like things are unstable. So often when I'm doing sessions during this time, we can talk about what is happening right now. We can help plan some things out, but we often don't make the big decisions. We can gather information, but we just notice where we might be feeling anxious or ungrounded. And, if people are trying to make big decisions about relationships or moving, usually those 3 days before an eclipse, the day of an eclipse, and the 3 days after, I can tell you hands down, not a time to make a major decision. But the anxiety often rises to say, I feel like I want to make a decision, I've just been watching everything from wanting to maybe purchase or sell different things and just saying, you know what? No, now's not the time. I'm just letting that go. I'll look at it next Tuesday. Tuesday, April 9th happens to be a mild green day, an Ashwini day. It is still in that arc, but the energy is going to be very different after the new moon. We'll have building energy to a beautiful full moon. Yeah. And so, um, one of the things I wanted I really just wanted to start with that grounding. Like if you take anything from today, it's just chill. It's all okay. All is well. All is well. And don't try and not get caught up in the excitement of it all because that's literally the nature of the eclipses. So when we act in the opposite direction of that, by grounding and calming, you actually help others calm. And as a result, you're helping ripple peace into the world, right? So literally just like stretching the backs of your legs. And another one I love is breathing into the pelvis. So right now, let's try that. If you can, feel your abdomen expand and your low back expand. Can you breathe in so that you feel both sides expand? Oxygenate that area or just take a gentle breath and just think of that area, the pelvis, and just breathe into it gently. So whichever feels better for you. A big breath. Yeah. So it is really calming. I'm really glad to hear. So as part of this, because I'm going to go into information and just notice when I go into information or if I say something that might bring up a concern or worry, you know, let's just set it in maybe a beautiful blue box and say, okay, you can ask Kathleen about that at the end, right? Everybody who's attending here, you're literally receiving this free gift. So as part of, I want to make sure this is up and part of the share. Here we go. And this is taking a moment. All right. So we know we're going to be talking about the total solar eclipse and some of the things that I went over already, practicing calming and grounding. Oh, rubbing your low back, right? Um, and or you put your hands like this on your hips and your thumbs land right on your sacroiliac and kind of rub there and then rock your pelvis a little. Ah, yeah. There's other ways to calm and um I'll go ahead and mention them. So I'll only mention one supplement, which is lemon balm. You can take just 2 drops of like a lemon balm tincture and put in a little bit of water. Some people use like a whole dropper full before bed to help them calm and go to sleep really well. So you wouldn't want to do a ton of it during the day unless someone's got a lot of anxiety, but just 1 or 2 drops just kind of bring in the mellow and just help you access that place. In Ayurveda, the nervousness, or when we're doing a lot of movement, if we notice we're making quick movements or we're doing travel, this can be very drying. And this brings in vata, a vata state. So some of the things we often use for vata are oiling the head, putting oil on the hair, wrapping it, and going to sleep like that. As soon as you oil your head, you just kind of feel the mellow, right? So just see what you're drawn to and what feels right for you, either on a daily basis leading into the eclipse or from now for the rest of your life when you notice you're nervous or if you're around someone who's nervous and has anxiety, literally you breathing into the lower part of your body and you calming yourself and speaking in a slower pace can actually calm others. So the things we're going to cover today, total solar eclipse is in Pisces. I'm going to talk about that, how to prepare for the eclipse, what to do on the day of eclipse, and I've already talked about the 1 month long eclipse season. So the total solar eclipse is in Pisces. Now, I didn't quite have time to have this was supposed to have a big water theme. And I think the next one, yeah. So both of the eclipses, they have just recently moved. They moved in very late 2023, but this is the first eclipse that is in the new place. And I'm going to go into some specifics here in a moment, but this metaphor, this image here, is because it almost should be kind of flipped because Pisces is the water and Virgo is all about the earth and trees and healing. And that's where the eclipses are right now. All that means is Ketu in Virgo and Rahu in Pisces simply means that for the next 18 months, when the eclipses occur, they will be occurring in Pisces and Virgo. So if you have a personal planet in those places, if that's like your career house or something, then those areas go through a little more instability. That's all. They're challenges that we can remain calm throughout. It's like a ripening of karmas to go, okay, well, this is a flavor of a challenge for you, and your challenge is to remain calm and even. It's okay if you get caught up in the drama. It's just a learning lesson, right? So it's more about really taking a look at, and this next eclipse, when I'm making a stronger point, I'll go away from the slides. Pisces is, of course, a water sign, but it is the 12th of the 12 constellations. And this total solar eclipse and new moon will be in a lunar mansion called Revite. Revite is literally the last of all 27 lunar mansions. It's the last of all the constellations. And it is the finishing of letting go and releasing. It's said that Revite, people who have planets in Revite, are there when people pass away and can like, some people are, are death doulas or they work in hospice care or they're ministers. I have a lot of friends with beautiful Jupiters in Revite and they're ministers because they help people in transition times, right? So it doesn't just have to be the actual ending. It can just be transition times when you're moving or going through a rough time, right? And so this new moon says, hey, you get to actively take a look at the last year of your life, the last 18 months and the last year, because we're finishing a Jupiterian year in the month of April. And Jupiter will be going into a new constellation on May 2nd. So we're also feeling some of that excitement, is the word I'll use instead of anxiety, the excitement that we're feeling that something's coming to an end and we're at the beginning of something new. And in those transitions, we often are like, what if, and what am I supposed to? And there can be insecurity sometimes or not knowing. It's okay. You're going to be able to follow your intuition very soon. I just recommend maybe not jumping on Monday the 8th, right? So this is just a time to be mellow. Now, Pisces is also representative of all the water on the planet. So as we have the path of totality, we will see that water in that path will possibly become an issue for the next 6 months and possibly the number of years in the places of totality. If you're not in totality, you might feel versions of this, but it's not going to be quite as strong. There'll be gradations of it going out from the path of totality. So if we're talking water, what do you think when you think Texas, Ohio, right? I immediately think groundwater, fracking, right? We already know these sorts of things are, oh, and what I also know is that Rahu has to do often with poison. So tainting of water sources. So we might see over the next 6 months and 2 to 3 years, some more incidents of maybe like there was just a mild earthquake in New Jersey and it was very mild. Someone posted a meme which was, we will rebuild, and they showed a plastic table with 3 plastic chairs and one chair was like on its back. So we might see mild earthquakes and or little cracks in areas that are the fracking water might affect some of the groundwater, right? That's already happening in versions in Florida and elsewhere. Again, deep breath, take calm breath if that makes you nervous at all. I'm just like, you are coming to me as an information resource. And so I'm just trying to give you information that is about the Vedic astrology and how it will affect these areas. The other most obvious thing is that, yes, the oceans will probably be affected, probably some more warming, but especially down in Mexico, but it will be, right? We're going into storms and hurricane season. I just saw a post that basically said this next year is actually slated to get like 23 storms across the Midwest. And so, yeah, so other people are commenting about water. everywhere, right? So this might be a call to action for you to work on your community wells, on your community water, to clean and clarify it, to make a different choice about what is your water source if you're not filtering your water, things like that. So you get to make that choice. You don't have to be in the path of totality to say, you know what? My personal theme for the next 18 months is to clean up the water that I drink and to help the community and to help people access information on how to get cleaner water and what do we want to do about how we process our water in our city, right? So this might be a call to action for you, right? So do you see how this works? You can feel into it and you may not have a lot of energy about it. Other people might be really jazzed to do that. But first, start with you and then let it echo out and ripple out into community where you have the energy. Remember, the eclipses are a time of excitement. So it's not like the next 4 days you dive deep and do tons of research and then say you're going to do something and, go intense, right? This is about like, okay, let's just observe and then see what you want to commit to maybe by the end of April and May. Yeah. But first you say, okay, I could clean up my water sources, right? Um, I need to I need to put a new filter on the shower head. It's sort of like, okay, I'll step up and do that. And so we do know that there's also increased storm activity that is slated to come through the Midwest of the United States. Wherever you live, there might be increased storm activity. And as a result, sure, it can actually affect the trees and the land. There could be flooding sometimes, but also if there's flights, right? So you yourself might not be in the path of totality, but you might be flying across the Midwest, or you might be making a transatlantic flight. And somewhere in the next 6 months, a flight might get disrupted. So if you happen to be flying in the next 6 months, okay, be open to the fact that you get to ground yourself in the midst of transition. And this is the kind of stuff that comes up. So is that kind of helpful that I'm giving specifics, but also that you can actually do something personally, right? And so if I were choosing a flight that, say, if I got to choose if something would connect through Cleveland or Dallas versus, oh, I'd rather maybe go through California and then go to the East Coast, I would make that decision because I know that there's going to be increased storm activity and then my flight isn't going to be as disrupted, right? Chicago is one of the worst hubs. If you're in another country, this simply applies to you in a slightly milder fashion. So you still personally can say, what am I going to do about the water I'm drinking? What am I going to possibly do with my community? Um, oh, yeah. So someone's even bringing up a topic here, which is someone was noticing that there's possibly some practices that people can douse with intent to help vibrationally clean up the water. I don't know if we can fully chemically clean it up, but we could definitely, I mean, dowsing is such a powerful practice because it's about being in alignment, right? And it's following the water. So there's just so many ways of um the so many ways to prepare for and use this information, right? So you might be making a flight 5 months from now, 7 months from now, and something you learned here will help you make a slightly different choice. Yeah. And so someone asked if there is a recording. I will not be sharing the recording with all of you. I will only be sharing it with like people in New Zealand who it's like in the middle of their night. I really wanted to encourage people to come live, but I will work on seeing about giving you some of these high points, right? Uh, and as I come back in review, I'll give you some high points and things like that in a follow-up email. And so this axis is activated for 18 months. Remember, I had mentioned that there's 3 sets of eclipses, 6 months apart from each other, over 18 months, giving one theme. So Pisces and Virgo become a theme in everyone's life. So whatever those houses are for you in your personal chart get activated, and those areas might be challenging. So, I know certain things about my chart and my husband's chart. So I know what's going to be coming up, that there'll be some more challenges for my husband. And because I'm married with him, I'm going to be supporting him a little more. So these are ways that we can actually be mindful about what's happening in a family life, right? It's a constellation. And the first set of this 18-month cycle is March, April 2024. And then we get another one 6 months later in September, October. But it's not as strong as this total solar eclipse. The total solar eclipse is and a time of, and I think I will go into this in just a moment. This next slide that I made is actually what I've already mentioned, that the theme of the total solar eclipse is letting go to finish the previous year. Like, what do you need to let go of? I'm going to go through my closet and get rid of old clothes. What do you spiritually want to let go of? What didn't happen that you had hopes of happening that you can say, you know what, I'm going to let that go so that I can go into something with a clean slate? Do you have grudges or regrets? What could you let go so it's not bogging you down or that you have story about? Is there some story that you tell of like, oh, this happened to me? When you say this happened to me, or you have a story like that, that is a little piece of victim storyhood. And so wait, see where you could take that story and turn it around into, huh, this happened and it's true, there were some results from it, and now I'm choosing to interact with the story in a different way, and I'm choosing to take that story and make it into where I'm moving forward, right? And so when you engage with a story and go, okay, there is a lesson here, I'm going to stop speaking of as if it happened to me and say it happened. And what will I choose to take from it? How will I choose to act? And what will I let go of it? Yeah. So it could just be as simple as noticing when you go into a little bit of a drama story or when you feel like something happened or was done to you. Ah, that's a huge awareness to let go of, isn't it? Right? We ended up choosing to do an entire kitchen remodel. We had no desire to remodel our kitchen. But years ago, there was a water leak. And at the beginning of that whole thing, for at least a year, we told the story as if it happened to us. But in actuality, we had this event that basically gave us the opportunity to choose to welcome a brand new, beautiful kitchen that we never would have chosen if that event wouldn't have occurred. So, how could you change a story that you have? Notice when you're talking as if something happened to you. That would be a beautiful thing to let go. But you get to decide what you're going to let go. And around eclipses, let's just see. Okay, so here we are to the good stuff. This is on the solar eclipse day. So what I'm going to do is stop the share and kind of go into a little more of a lesson around eclipses in general, but then this total solar eclipse specifically. So the reason I originally called eclipse days mega red days was because I wanted to let everybody know that these are days to pay attention to. So there's one red day every month, and that's simply the lunar day before the new moon. If the new moon is at the end of the day, sometimes the red day is that day. Red days are not anything to be frightened of. They're just lower mental and physical energy. So if you are a marathon athlete, you're not going to work out for 3 hours on that day. You would only work out an hour. If you're a regular person, you might still take a daily walk, but you're not going to push yourself and do an extra workout on a red day. Yeah. So there's just ways to listen. And if there's something that, that's already booked and you're giving a presentation on a red day at work or something, you would simply maybe take an extra dose of brain herbs or something on a regular red day. And a regular red day in summertime is simply much milder than in your winter time where you are. So there's one red day every single month. And then 4 to 6 times a year are the mega red days or the eclipse days. Now, in the Buddhist and the Vedic tradition, it is said that what we do on an eclipse day counts 100,000 fold. Some say 20,000, some say 100,000 fold. What does that mean? It counts 100,000 fold. Remember, a total solar eclipse is not about creation. This is not a law of attraction moment, everybody. This is not about setting intentions for prosperity or babies or relationships, okay? It's not about creating. It's the exact opposite. You want to act in resonance with the energy. So the resonance of the energy is, what will I go without? How will I choose to choose my spiritual tradition, my daily morning routine over everything else? So these become opportunities to actually increase your spiritual field, increase your discipline, and neutralize. Sometimes I say reverse karmas, reverse habits, and neutralize karmas. Okay. It's a huge opportunity. So that is something to kind of get excited about. That's the reason I kind of put the big, heavy, mega red day on it, is because it's like, hey, if you can, I have colleagues who are like flying on planes that day, but they are deep spiritual practitioners. So they're going to be in mantra. Um, there were conditions out of their control. This arose. So if something's happening on that day, if you have to work on that day, it's okay. Just in the morning, wake up extra early when you begin. And this is where we're getting into the preparation of the eclipse. This is why I wanted to meet today, Friday, because I don't want to be talking about this on Monday. I don't want to be on camera. I don't want to be connecting with the world on the eclipse day. I'm withdrawing from the world. I'm pulling down my shades. And I'm going to be doing practices during the peak of the eclipse. But right now, leading up to the eclipse, guess what I'm doing? I'm eliminating things from the house that might tempt me if they're snacks or food. I'm noticing where I have strong desires and saying, oh, okay, I'm having strong desires to go do that thing or make an appointment or buy something or sell something. And so just noticing where those tugs are, the tugs on our desire get stronger because eclipses are actually intoxicating. You cannot take your eyes away when you're watching a lunar eclipse. You can't take your eyes away when you're watching a solar eclipse with protection or poking a hole through something onto the ground, right? Um, and so there's an intoxicating quality to them, and they bring up intoxication. So we want to avoid those things. So you would avoid foods that you notice you can't stop eating, or you don't do alcohol. But leading up to the eclipses, you can actually prepare by beginning to practice what is your ideal day? What is your ideal morning spiritual routine? Now, I use the word spiritual, but some people, like I was teaching a prosperity workshop, and one person was kind of getting into some Wiccan practices, which is really just connecting with nature every day. So, as part of her daily practices, she would go out and be in nature and say a few things. So, what is your personal spiritual practice? You might have a religion, you might have spiritual practices. It could just be, I'm welcoming the day. How do you want to start your day every day? What would that ideal day look like? And what would those practices be? Start practicing them now because guess what? You'll notice what is the distraction. And you'll then also be setting the rhythm such that then on the eclipse day, if you have the ability to take a little extra time, you can actually make it a deeper, longer day of practices. I will be practicing pretty much all day long. Um, but that's just what I choose to do. So today I did a slightly shorter practice, but it still took me an hour, right? Just to do my basics, you know, awake, I do my Ayurvedic tongue scraping. I do certain things, with oils and things like that. And then I go and I stand facing east and do mild yoga, sun salutation, and stretches and prep. And I do mantra and breathing. And it's just a mellow, mellow, mellow experience of just waking the body up after showering and things like that. So, what is your ideal morning practice? Yeah. And as you begin to practice that each day, you'll notice where are those distractions. And don't judge it because we're always going to have distractions, right? Around the eclipses. It just is like, oh, hey, note to self that may actually take me a half hour to do a 10 or 15-minute practice. Yeah. It may take you waking up an hour early. And that remember, this is about challenging commitment and discipline. This is where you are receiving a test or a challenge. And so that's why I say let's prepare for it. Let's go to the grocery store early so that you are not leaving the house or needing to go out on Monday, that you can have all the food that you need. And part of the reason I often recommend 3 days before going shopping, because then 2 days later, the day before the eclipse, so 4 and 3 days before, all of a sudden you're like, wow, maybe I didn't plan as well. You've got to just grab something the day before the eclipse. That way, you'll have all the veggies and all the fruit you want. I recommend not eating meat on the eclipse day. So there's lots of, exactly, follow your dinacharya. So, you know, but realize that leading up to the eclipse, especially Rahu moon experiences, so Rahu moon eclipses, Rahu moon eclipses are the most kind of exciting, right? This set of eclipses, it's a K2 moon, it's a K2 lunar eclipse on the 24th of March. And that was actually a very spiritual, it's like this ends up being a lot easier cycle. When the sun, moon, and Rahu are aligned, that is um, possibly some distractions, but not as distracting as a Rahu lunar eclipse. So this is actually, in terms of eclipses, I'm noticing it is a little bit easier. Yeah. And so, yes, of course, follow your dinacharya or your daily routine and just notice where are those distractions and you might need a little extra time or you might want to add some things. And then on the eclipse day, and so then you'll follow that and notice that there might be distractions 3 days after as well. Don't feel like, woof, I got through the eclipse, right? And so this is a way that you actually prepare for the event. Now, on the day of the eclipse, um, this, because I remember I mentioned it's a powerful window of time to choose something. So this is how you are actually meeting karmas and reversing habits, is to possibly fast on the day itself, at the very least, fast during the 3 hour window. Now, I'm going to be giving you a specific link. And I meant to start with that. I have a blog post that literally goes through the different locations, mostly in the United States, but even around the world, and a link that you can find out what's going on with the eclipse from your specific location. And depending on where you are, give or take, most solar eclipses happen about 3 hours. And that's from the very beginning of it in one location through to the end at another location. So when you go to the blog post and see, oh, the eclipse only appears to be 2 hours long where I live, I still give it a 3 hour window. So you'll find where the maximum is where you are, and then just go about an hour and a half before and an hour and a half after. So I'm on the West Coast, so give or take, the new moon's at 11:20. It goes in maximum about 11:13, like in San Jose, California. So give or take 11:10 to 11:20 is kind of your peak time. I'm being very general here because that's a strong 10 minutes to focus on the West Coast. From 11:10 to 11:20 is the peak time. And therefore, the hour and a half before is 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. So, or sorry, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. would be your 3 hour window. And you take that exact time and add a couple of hours for Central Time and add 3 hours for Eastern Time. So it's a 3 hour window that you could just not eat lunch. Right? It's a good day to fast in general. Okay. So you might have something very, very light. Some people choose to only eat fruit all day on eclipses. Some people do only fruit juice. Some people fast each Tuesday and only do fruit juice all day. So this is something that you get to choose what you do. What is your version of fast? It might just be that you have soup after the eclipse finishes, but you don't cook the soup during the eclipse because there's no Agni, there's no digestive fire, there's no nourishment and things that are prepared during solar eclipses, right? It's like eating cardboard. And then on the day of the eclipse, of course, sit in meditation, but most importantly, at the peak of the eclipse or somewhere in those 3 hours, depending on what your life is, might just be at your lunch break at work if you've got to go to work, to sit in meditation just for those 10 minutes of that peak time, right? Now, the peak eclipse itself is anywhere from 2 to 4 minutes in the path of totality, but I'm giving it a 10-minute so that you're actually there and calm. Because at the moment of eclipse, we don't want to be moving around because this is about fostering stillness and peace in your life. So practice grounding, stretching the sacrum, cat-cow, activating that lower body in the first chakra to kind of ground yourself if you're feeling nervous. It is often a very mellow day. People often say to me, "Hey, Kathleen, I went through the eclipse. It was no big deal. It was super mellow. I took time off and I did these things. Nothing happened, like people are expecting the sky to fall or something." Well, guess what? First of all, it's a little egoic of me to say this, but like you chilled out your day because I said, yeah, unhook, don't go in the world, don't go to the grocery store, don't be out activating and having conversations with people. Now, if you happen to be leading a retreat or are on a retreat and the focus of the retreat, you can get the quiet and you're either doing mantra or you're doing yoga or you're doing some spiritual practice, that's in alignment, right? So what is recommended is simply not to be trying to create something in the world. And this is also partly why in Vedic astrology, literally the pundits help set the schedule of what happens. And so many people have off work or can take off work uh, if they live in India or, you don't even have to be Hindu to basically notice that a lot of the world goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. There's some special ritual happening at the temple or there's some special event. Guess why that is? It's specifically so people are not in the world buying stuff, making babies, trying to do things in their business. They're being called to do religious and spiritual practices. That's why the lunar calendar is like that. Yeah. Um, so the webinar is set to be, an hour. So I am going to hurry up here because I want to do some um, practices with all of you. And it might go a little bit over, but the core of it here is an hour. Oh, somebody's freezing. Oh, yeah. Can you grab some extra shawls? And also, why don't you go ahead if somebody's cold, go ahead and stand up and why don't you do some squats? That's going to help warm you up. Okay. Start moving around. Yeah. And I wanted to just do the grounding stuff, but then you can get a little bit cool. The other thing is to protect the neck because that's also Vata area of the body. And I'm about to go into these other practices here. I just wanted to mention this. So often saying mantra on the day of the eclipse. Now that's part of my daily practice, but saying mantra at the time of the eclipse in those 3 hours, and in particular at the peak of the 10 minutes. Now I put here icing. Someone has already asked me about this. I mentioned to the paid Conscious Calendar subscribers about a silk shawl, and someone didn't have a silk shawl and they didn't have the money and the time. It was causing some worry. So silk happens to be one of the most protective um, materials that helps hold um, uh, your field and contain and protect you. So wearing silk actually protects your energy a bit. The best, of course, is non-harm silk. And so if you don't have silk, it's okay. So any natural product. So wool, sitting on a wool blanket is the very best thing for your dinacharya and for meditation. It's very grounding, it's natural. So if you have a wool sweater even, you could just put a wool sweater over your head, right? Um, or any natural fabric, drape it over your head. Now I drape it all the way down over so that not I can't see out. and then I have prayer beads under, and then I'm doing longer practices during those entire 3 hours. You get to choose what works for you. Okay. Now, this is where a lot of people misunderstand. At the moment of the eclipse, so if you are in Kenya, if you are in Norway, at the moment of the eclipse, okay, it might be the middle of the night for you, but you do have a choice that you can set an intention of what you will commit to do. This is a commitment for your personal routine that is healthy and develops your spiritual self. It's not, oh, I'm going to set an intention to make X amount of dollars or bring a boyfriend in the world or something, right? This is not about setting that kind of intention. It's what discipline are you going to choose and how are you going to show up for your spiritual self? That's how you use the moment of the eclipse if you make an intention or a commitment. Now, very often before a mantra practice, we do commit to something, either a commitment to the practice itself or um, committing to connect with um, part of what is important in your spiritual path, right? So the commitment might be, I will wake before sunrise every day and do X practice. That might be the commitment, but make sure it's something that's doable. So don't make a big commitment. It could just be, I commit to smile at one stranger a day, right? So it can be about something that is simple and important. I commit to um, hugging myself each day, cultivating a sense of connection with self, right? And so that's what's most important. Now, as we get into some of the practices, so this is what to avoid on a total solar eclipse day. Now, the picture is a little warped, and the idea is maybe don't go to a party. I even had a picture of a guy like doing, DJ, like don't go to a rave, right? That's kind of an easy one. But I'll tell you, I have clients who for years, we're talking like they have taken their children through college and their kids call home and say, "Hey, mom, when is the red day?" Or, "Hey, mom, when is the mega red day?" And these kids know at college to not go partying that night. Isn't that amazing? I didn't have that help when I was in college. So, avoid eating at the peak of the eclipse because you don't have the digestive fire anyway. You might fast during the 3 hours of the eclipse. In general, be vegetarian. If you yourself are not vegetarian, avoid eating meat, avoid alcohol, avoid negative sentences about others or yourself. Any kind of addiction, or where do you feel the tug? You'll see, you've been noticing, has everybody been noticing like one or two little areas where you've it's been harder to say no to something, you've gotten a little obsessive about something? That's your thing for this eclipse, right? So just have some compassion for it. And maybe that becomes the thing that you say no to on April 8th. So are you spending too much time on media? Are you looking up something and researching something intensely? Don't do it on the eclipse day. So this applies to all eclipses, lunar and solar, and it's harder on lunar eclipses to do this because full moons and an eclipse kind of bring a different kind of excitement. This is actually going to be super mellow. So avoid talking about others, especially negatively. That should be every day, but like especially on that day. Avoid trying to create something, setting intentions of what you're bringing into the world. Yeah, guess what? That day is a day to let go, everybody. Just chill, just let go and say, what am I letting go of? What story am I letting go of? April 9th happens to be a mild green day and Ashwini moon, and it is actually the beginning of the building of energy. Now, Mars is crossing Saturn from April 9th through the 13th, so we're still going to feel a little edge after the eclipse, okay? But in general, the energy builds through the 23rd, and then we go into a mini golden zone. And I talked all about that in the second quarterly course. And so sit in meditation. So as I mentioned, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you can sit in meditation before going to bed on Sunday night, April 7th, and then first thing in the morning when you wake, sit in meditation and go through your daily routine or your dinacharya. And at the peak eclipse time, wherever you live, be in meditation. Now, if it's 3 in the morning for you, you can choose to sleep through. It depends on the eclipse. Sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and do some mantra and practice and then just take a nap later in the day. You get to decide what feels right. Maybe you just meditate before bed and first thing in the morning. Totally okay, because if the eclipse is in the middle of the night where you are, then you it's not affecting you as much versus when you're in the path of totality, it's happening right in the middle of your day. You know when it is, you can choose to meditate. Um, and there's a way to work with this where whenever it is, wherever it is, every 6 months, there is this opportunity to actually neutralize karmas and actually reverse negative habits or unhealthy habits and say yes to expanding your spiritual field. And it's just an incredible opportunity. Um, oh, I must have duplicated that slide. And so we have the opportunity now. And then in 6 months, the eclipses are going to be somewhere else in the world. Yeah. And so now we're to the practices. And let me just see. I think we're doing right on time. And so when you do the practices, and I just wanted to mention that what I was talking about with the rooting down, I had the blessing of I'm in sound school with Gina Salah. She's a very dear friend and an incredible teacher and woman. And she just feels what's going on and then recommends practices. I take the information and feel she is just magic. And so she's the one that was actually talking about the roots. I love the metaphor with the roots in the first chakra. Just wanted to honor Gina and mention her. Her Sanskrit is even better than mine. She is like a Sanskrit scholar and just an incredible being and teacher. So anything that you repeat, so I want to just mention that. Now, when we come to the day of the eclipse, again, you have the choice on the day or at the peak time to be doing a mantra is like silk. It's a form of protection. It's like pulling down the shades. And so you could be, if you're at work, you could say it silently. And anything that you repeat helps ground. Yeah. It's called japa in Hindi, but anything that you repeat helps ground. So when we rock, right, it's actually activating the reticular activating the RAS. And when we say repeat something, it actually creates a way that the conscious mind calms down. So the simplest will be Om, to repeat Om. It could be, if you don't know any mantras at all, it could just be peace. I am in peace. I am loving peace. It could be Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Other ones are that, and before I get into these other mantras here, I just want to remind you that you can choose anything that you repeat. It could be, now, the other question that often comes up is, can I play the mantra? So the best way to receive the benefits are to actually say a mantra. So the simpler, the better, something that you can say over and over. If you play it, it actually helps calm things. And it is a form of a ripening of a karma to play mantras and to actually have that around you. If you're playing a longer mantra that you don't know, that you can also, that's totally wonderful. It is always more beneficial for you to say a mantra. If you're at work, the effects are all slightly different if you're saying something silently or you're saying it out loud. There's benefit to each. So if you're at home and you can say a mantra out loud and then go into the silent version, that has sort of a double effect. If you're in public and want to just put headphones in and can listen to a mantra and then be saying it silently, or say it silently yourself. All of these are solutions to tap into the mantra. Okay. Now, Durga is typically one that I recommend a Durga mantra around a full moon and a lunar eclipse. But because this is Rahu with Venus and Sun and Moon in Pisces, Durga mantra, Durga is a goddess who brings peace and tranquility, especially to the mind and mental health. She's a protector of women and children and brings immediate protection. Tara is the now Tara is actually both Hindu and Buddhist goddess, and Tara in the Buddhist tradition, Om Tare, and I actually do a practice where I add an extra syllable, Om Tare, Tutare, Ture, Soha. Tara practices in the Buddhist tradition are said to bring courage and also protection, especially in traveling. Om Tare, Tutare, Chure, Soha. That extra tu brings an extra energy to the practice. So if you already know a Tara mantra, this isn't about like learning something new. If you already know these practices, I'm giving the prompts. If you don't know any of these, then simply say Om or Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. That's about letting go, right? That's the ultimate metaphor about letting go. So Durga is one mantra. Om Dung Durgaya Namaha. Om Dung Durgaya Namaha. Om Dung Durgaya Namaha. That will calm some of the frenzy. The other one that really comes to that came to me as I was preparing for the class was the Buddhist mantra of peace. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Do you see how the variety and how each one feels slightly different? And then if you want to create even more calm, you would say it slower. Om Mani Padme Hum. And I mentioned Om Namah Shivaya. That's the ultimate in letting go. And this last one I actually have on a slide, and I will share it with all of you. The Sanskrit, it's called the Maha Mrityunjaya mantra. Some people call it the Om Triambakam because that's the first line. And this mantra actually is a Saturn mantra. So we were doing a lot of grounding in first chakra, but of the upper chakras, we actually have Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu. They are in the upper chakras. Isn't that interesting? The eclipse patterns are in the upper chakras with Saturn because these are where it is most difficult, where it is a little more challenging to be calm and at one. So I often recommend for people who already know this mantra, and I will sing it with you, the Mahamrityunjaya mantra. It is considered a mantra of immortality. And because the sun is blocked by the moon, and Saturn is often associated with death, so when someone's running a Saturn cycle, this is often a recommended practice. It brings in wonderful teachers into your life. It brings deep meditations when you say this mantra. And because Saturn is associated with death, this mantra of immortality helps reduce fear. It reduces fear and anxiety in life, especially fear at major transitions. So that's why I recommend this around eclipses, because a lot of times people are sort of in their stuff around eclipses. Yeah. And so this mantra, I will go ahead and say, for those who know it, please join me. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urva Rukamiva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiyamamritat. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim pushtivardhanam urvarukamiva bandhanan mrityor mukshiyamamritat. Om Triambakang Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiyamamritat. Now, do you see how that has a very different feeling than the Durga and the Om Mani Padme Hum? And so I really wanted to just mention that. Oh, and well, yes, I didn't want to give too many, but I also personally do Gayatri. Someone asked, what about Surya Gayatri? And so, yes, I also do an entire mala of Gayatri. So we have a huge range of people here. Some people are new to this concept. Other people are advanced practitioners or deep practitioners and been doing this a number of years. So I personally, in the beginning of the 3 hour window, I do my morning routine, fast for the day, and then at the beginning of the 3 hour window, do an entire mala or 108 of Mahamrityunjaya mantra. And then usually it's just I'm super mellow and then naturally meditate for anywhere from half hour to an hour, maybe take a sip of water, and still in that mellow state, then do a mala or 108 sing of Gayatri because it is a solar eclipse. And so that is also resonant to sing Gayatri. And that's what I personally do are those two practices and amazing and then naturally meditate after that. And that's truly, it ends up being almost exactly um, 3 hours. Now, that's for those of you who already know these and already know how to use a mala and things like that. But we've got a whole range of people here. So if you even just for 1 minute on the day of the eclipse, if you have not been meditating and you start meditating, oh, that is fantastic. And if you have some form of practice and you've been off it and on it a little bit, this is a time to say yes for the next 4 days. It will be so much easier to continue that practice on a daily basis. So I often leapfrog my practices. So leapfrog in that every eclipse, I do my daily practices that I've been doing, and I either add one thing or I adjust it, and then that sort of becomes the new routine for the next 6 months. And it's so easy, so much easier to do my practices when I say yes to those things and commit to it. Yeah. So sometimes if I gotten off, say, my walking routine, then I'm like, okay, I'm going to do all of those practices and my walk. And then somehow that commitment, it happens so much easier. It is part of the commitment. You still got to show up and say yes to what you commit to. Um, Yes, we can. We can all chant and meditate every day as is possible. Yes. Yes, it is. And so what I love is we have comments coming in, so I'm just going to share them. Um, and this part of the reason I tend not to share the recording, and I just want everybody to come be here is because if I have made a mistake in the Sanskrit mantra, then it is being shared in perpetuity. I'm going to share it with the people in New Zealand, but it's something I learned from Robert Svoboda. He won't record himself doing Sanskrit mantra at the beginning of a teaching, right? Because I always do mantra before I teach as well. And so let's see, I'm going to go back. And so, someone has a wonderful question. What about Tarpana? So Tarpana is a water practice. Now, Tarpana is actually said not to be done on certain days, and eclipses would be those days. So Tarpana is a fantastic practice if you know what that is. You can actually, I believe tarpana.org is a practitioner that shares what it is. It doesn't really give the why about it that much, but in January, when I mentioned, when I gave the class on aligning with the elements to set our intentions. So each of the elements has a power to it. Doing a puja or a fire practice has one energy. Water practices are tarpana, which helps us even out or come settle with our true nature. And so Tarpana practices, the actual translation of Tarpana is satiation. What we're actually doing is satiating all of the energies within us. So we've got bugs on our eyelashes, we have bugs in our gut, we've got all these things tugging on us, right? Do this, eat that, think that. And so when we do Tarpana practices, it quiets all of the energy because we actually become one and mellow with the water element. It also helps calm all the tugging that we have on from our ancestors, and it allows us to actually fully be present. It's so much easier to meet commitments with Tarpana practices, but traditionally it's not done on eclipse days. Um, and so you can check on tarpana.org. I think he has listed there. And then there's certain nakshatras, certain days that you don't do it, but a rule of thumb, like the red day, the regular red day of the month, not the mega red day. The regular red day is actually usually, in general, a good day to do tarpana because the energy is very quiet. The veil between us and the other worlds is thinner, so tarpana is a great day. Yay. So some people still do Durga and Mahamrityunjaya that I had recommended years ago. You guys are amazing. They help protect. Yes. Yes, you're welcome. Blessings to you. Somebody asked about Gayatri, and that's a yes. Um, yeah. Yay. So somebody's already familiar with Om Mani Padme Hum. Yeah. Oh, can you hum the latter? Oh, can you hum the latter with the variation of the former? Or would that be a form? Oh, no, of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The other thing is grounding practices, humming. So to activate the vagus nerve, humming is something that actually is very calming. So humming this mantra with the other rhythm, totally fine to do. Follow what feels good. If you're humming the mantra, that is like a trifecta, right? You're saying it silently inside, you're humming and calming your own vagus nerve. You know what you need. Yeah, everybody needs something a little bit different. You know what you need. Just feel it. Yeah, if you do it, it feels kind of good or comfortable. And so somebody else is mentioning something about their personal chart about where that Saturn Mars conjunction is happening. So Mars will be crossing Saturn for about 4 days after the solar eclipse. And that happens, I give it a 1 degree range. So when Mars is 1 degree before Saturn, over Saturn, and 1 degree after, that will be April 9th through 13th. So there, and I explain this to all the paid subscribers. There's a whole video in there about it. There might be some edginess in your life a little bit, but it's coming from a different source. And so just realize that, there are some challenges during that week, but then the energy builds to this beautiful full moon in this like mini golden zone where we just get this connection with others, right? And so that's why on the eclipse day, to not be in the world would be better. And I did have some specific questions about that. Yay, we can all chant and meditate every day. It's possible. People are thanking me for the opportunity. Further suggestions for the following 3 days. The biggest challenge after getting through the eclipse is to continue that calm energy, right? To not just jump back into life and go, okay, great, you're going to go out to dinner with friends or whatever. Try and keep those next 3 days mellow, especially because this year and this month, we have Mars crossing Saturn. And again, nothing to be concerned about. It's simply our I call them edgy planets. They both kind of have a little bit, can have chips on their shoulders, and they're the opposite energy of each other. And so, somewhere in our life, we might experience irritability. So, whatever axis that is for you, or whatever house Aquarius is for you in your chart, you'll understand what's happening in your life. So if that's your first house, you personally might be a little more irritable. But what I can say is that I recommend being very mindful of transitions of leaving the house and getting in your car, transitions of stepping off curbs, transitions of going from light to shade, shade to light. There's something about Saturn Mars that usually opens up like little minor accidents with wrists and ankles and things like that. Stay away from cliffs for hiking, things like that. And so there could be little minor things. So if you have feel a little tweak for a couple of days, you want to just take extra good care of it, add tiger balm to it, be gentle with the transition. The transition places in the body are the neck and all of the joints, but the wrists and ankles in particular. Um, oh, okay. So when I was talking about which areas to avoid flying over, what I was saying is the path of totality. Oh, and here's the point. Let me share this. I have Jennifer, can you share the URL of the blog? Actually, I have it here. I'll put it in chat. I've already got it opened. Um, and I have not shared yet. So let me share so you all can see that while I go into chat and put this to everyone. There. So this is the URL of one blog post. It doesn't have all the information of like what we talked about today. But what it has are the nuts and bolts. And so it is showing you where the path of totality is. So it's 100% from Mazatlan, Durango, Mexico, up through San Antonio, Austin, Dallas. And then as we scroll down, it'll be Cleveland, and then it ends up in Montreal. And so all I was saying was, because the path of totality will create some form of disruption for the next 6 months and possibly 2 years. I was using the example of storms, that storms. I was reading an article just yesterday saying that we already have that the storm season is actually already bigger than expected, that they're expecting more category 3 hurricanes and things and more storms that will land where? In the central part of the United States. So all I was saying is um, if you are flying in the next 6 to 9 months, you might notice that you could choose to not do a connecting flight in the areas of the path of totality because the probability will be higher that those areas might have a storm or just some technical difficulty at those locations, right? So on the day of the eclipse, maybe those things will happen, but what happens is the vibration is there for at least 6 months. And the path of totality is the area that is most affected. The number of minutes of totality affect that area for the number of years. So it's these areas that will probably experience maybe something to do with storms, maybe their water, the people themselves might go through a little more stressors. Um, and like there was a total lunar eclipse in Houston just before Katrina. And Katrina ended up affecting Houston for the next 3 to 6 years. They got most of the population of people who couldn't go back to their homes in Louisiana. So totality, so either where you can see the total lunar eclipse or the path of totality affects those areas. And all I was saying is, oh, if I'm flying across the United States as an American, I know that there can be connecting flights in Chicago, right? And Chicago is kind of close to all this, or Dallas. Well, if I have to take a connecting flight, I might not choose the Dallas connection because the storms might be happening there in the next 6 months a little stronger. Plus, the logic says that there was even an article that said there's going to be more storms in central United States. So the two together, using the Vedic astrology and logic, the two together, you can make decisions in your life. So if I had to have a connecting flight, I might not choose a location that had previously been on the path of totality. I know that was kind of deep and detailed, but I wanted to explain. Somebody had that question. All right, so now um, you're welcome, everyone. I don't know if you all can see the chat. Um, is there a mantra to say to Mars that would mellow the martial influence? There is. Um, and that very often is the Hanuman mantra. So Hanuman is the mantra of ultimate service and peace. So that's probably the best one to do for right now. Mahamrityunjaya or Hanuman for April 9th through 13th, if you want to add that to your practices or begin it now. Hanuman, ah, being of service, being loving, really mellows anger and irritability. So thank you for asking that. Um, is being outside in the morning of the eclipse recommended? Well, again, this is not, we don't, I don't want to bring up like fear or concern. Yeah, if you want to take your morning walk and say you're in the United States and the eclipse is happening um, in the middle of your day, then yeah, if that's part of your daily routine to get up and go for a walk or you're outside, yeah, that's totally fine. I personally don't go out on an eclipse day if I can, but it's totally fine. I'll still sometimes maybe go for a super early morning walk, but yeah, just and if you have to be outside during the eclipse, say you're in your commute or some other thing, it's okay, everybody. It is. It's okay. Um, you can choose to not look at it, yeah, and it's nice. Oh, somebody here is asking about Newfoundland. Yeah. Um, let's see. I understood that the eclipse path extends to Corner Brook, Newfoundland. It is correct. Yes, I did mention that in the paid video. It does. So let me just show that. I don't know if that shows it here. Takes a second to be able to do this. And so here, exactly, it does go to Newfoundland and Labrador, right? So it goes through Montreal and then continues up here. And then here, the maximum eclipse time, the peak of the eclipse is 3:27 p.m. And the beginning of, right, it's only 2 hours and 22 minutes because it's not the full 3 hours. But in that path of totality, that's kind of the strongest energy is those 2 hours and 22 minutes. And the peak is happening at 3:27 in Montreal. And the one thing to know is that you can go to timeanddate.com and click on the eclipse day. They will see your IP location and tell you. If you're in Newfoundland, it will tell you the exact time. And you have to, we've manually put this all together for all of you. You'll have to see the beginning and the end and when the maximum time is for you in Newfoundland. So I did mean to include that. Does the path go over Toronto? Let's take a look. Um, so Toronto is right here at the edge of it. It's not totality, but if we look at the colors, right? It's that next color. Oh, wait, I apologize. This is path of totality. Let's see. So the total is right here in the red. Toronto is right at the edge of just under 100%. So Toronto is in that path, as is Ottawa and Quebec. Um, and so and so yeah, they're it's like more of an opportunity for you if you're in the path that when you say no to something, it's like even stronger, right? You're building your spiritual discipline even stronger if you're in the path of it. The energy is more palpable. Yeah. So all good questions. Um, oh, you're welcome. One person's just giving a lot of gratitude for sharing the time. It really is a gift to you. I just wanted, yes, of course, it's totally okay to feed the birds on the eclipse day. Yes, yes, it is a creation thing, but do it in the morning. That's totally fine. You're spreading love. Um, you're welcome. Someone else is thanking me to try and get our community waters clean. And then I think that is everything. And I did go into that. I don't think there's any Q&A. And so I thought we could all just, oh yeah, somebody else asked the same question. Thank you, girl. Girl, I think is how I say it. Gerald. What color should we wear on that day? So it's a Monday. And so the two colors I recommend are because it's a solar eclipse, you could wear the colors of the sun, which are yellow in the orange range, or Monday, the moon's color, which is a beautiful, like robin's egg blue, a very light blue, very calming, pastel colors. So whichever direction you're kind of drawn, I often recommend wearing the color of the day. And then because it's an eclipse day, still going ahead and choosing the color of the day. But because it's a solar eclipse, you could choose the color of the sun to kind of like, you know, help the solar energy a little bit on that day. Yeah. So thank you for asking such good questions, everyone. Wow, we've got some amazing practitioners here. We've got people who are doing everything from cleaning the water to taking care of birds in your communities. Yes, yes, exactly, right. So each person kind of has a unique quality. Like this person just said, "Oh, I'm a Leo, so I'll go ahead and do yellow." That makes sense, right? Right? That because that is your personal planet, your power planet, as I call it. And because it's being eclipsed, you can call in that color on that day, right? And so somebody else, they're going to want more mellow on the day just to make sure they're not nervous, and they might choose the light blue or some pastel colors. Yep. So the vibration of the colors you can choose in alignment with each of the planets. And that's something that I believe I have blog posts about. If you want to go over, you could just say color in search and find articles that I have on the colors of the planets and the days of the week. So you can wear and colors aligned with. Today, I'm going a little more Mercury because Mercury is retrograde, I'm wearing Mercury gemstones. And so I chose to do that even though it's Friday. It's also because on camera, if I wear all white, it kind of is a little glaring on for you, so I chose Mercury for today. Oh, and so thank you everyone for being here so long and letting me gift you. I'm actually going into another webinar for the paid folks, but I'm just so glad that you are all here and that you got this information and you get to choose. You get to choose what works for you on that day. There's no decreeing a perfect thing. There's so many different ways to balance the energy. And I really hope it was helpful and that you feel a little more grounded. So, we went through a lot of information. Go ahead and like tilt that pelvis and get grounded. You're welcome, everyone. So many thank yous coming in. It's just my pleasure to be a resource for you, right? Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. Someone said, thank you so much for all the amazing gifts. One of the most powerful guidances they've ever experienced. Oh, love and gratitude. Thank you. You're very, very welcome. So let's go ahead. And if you guys would like to, we could just finish with 3 ohms and then maybe an Om Namah Shivaya. Om. We're doing it all together. We're connected around the world. Om. Your Om is a blanket of love and peace vibrating around the world. Om. Om Namah Shivaya. 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 Om. Hmm. Yeah. Welcome the mellow, everybody. Trust me, when you do practices during the solar eclipse and you do some mantra, super mellowing and deep time because the new moon is a very quiet time. And so I'm sending you blessings and thank you for rippling peace into the world and choosing to be here together. My love to all of you. Goodbye.